Hello again. This is Heather Alderman, the Executive Director of COSMA. Today, in our last fall session of training on the accreditation process, I'm going to talk about the different accreditation decisions that the Board of Commissioners makes, and also a little bit about the reaffirmation of accreditation process and what that looks like. So once a program has been granted accreditation the first time, they will go through that process again every 7 years. So just a little reminder about what that looks like, especially because 7 years can seem like a long time and people forget what they're supposed to do. So in order to talk about the accreditation decisions, I need to talk about the role of the Board of Commissioners because they are the ones who make these decisions. So I don't make the decision. I'm certainly out there helping people and providing training, acting as a liaison, reading materials and giving feedback on drafts of all kinds of things. But I am not making the decision. I'm just helping to gather the best material that you can provide for the commissioners to make that decision. So when they are making a decision, of course, this is at the self-study after the site visit. That's the place in the accreditation process that they are in when they're making a decision. And they will make a decision only during one of their 2 in-person meetings a year. So this occurs in September of every year and in February of every year. So they look at your self-study that you have written, the site visit team report that was written, and then you have a response. And I've talked about this in all my other trainings, all these different aspects of this process. You have written a rejoinder, a response to action items and to recommendations, and anything else that you want to say in your response. They're going to look at your programmatic website and all the associated web pages just to see, does this information match with this information? What is clear or not clear about your website? Some of these things may seem odd. There may be some complaints against your program, and we will probably not find any, but that does happen occasionally. Sometimes programs are in the news or an institution is in the news. This is not as or this is a little bit more frequent than, say, a complaint. But there are all kinds of things going on in higher education, and there are all kinds of things that might happen at the institutional level or at the programmatic level. So this is not super common, but when doing a Google search about a program, what comes up and what do we find and what does that mean for accreditation? It may not be related, it may not have any impact, but anyway, they're looking at a lot of different things. So they're going to review the site visit team report, of course, in depth, because they're really relying on that team to provide an analysis of the self-study documents. So they want to make sure that it's complete, it's factual, it's objective. And of course, that's also a part of my role, is to make sure that the report is comprehensive and clear and provides this information. And if, I guess they're also looking for any disagreement in what the site visit team might have reported. And this is not particularly common, but it is something that is okay for a program to say, this team interpreted us this way, but this is not exactly how it is we do things. Certainly, this team is studying up and they are looking at your program and they're trying to understand every little aspect. They may get a few things wrong. So you can correct all of that when you're responding to the site visit team report, but that's something that the commissioners are going to look at as well, and they're going to get that clarification. So after they've done all of this work, and the board, generally we assign a sort of smaller subgroup to review in depth each of the programs that will have an accreditation decision made about them. And then, of course, all the commissioners are required to read all of the materials. And we have a matrix which the commissioners fill out to analyze the issues that have been identified and the response. And so they then will be comparing that to the principle, to what degree is this program now in compliance with each of these principles. So that's what they're doing. And they also, of course, this is got a lot of gray area where what degree, as I said, you're in compliance with the principle, is it a serious deficiency? It is a less serious deficiency. What have the decisions been in the past, and how do they relate to what they're seeing in this particular program? So all of those things are taken into account. And also, not every program is, some programs don't want to change or are not interested in really moving themselves forward always in pursuit of excellence in sport management education. So if there's a resistance to something that has been either advised or has been required, and that may not be from the program, it may be from another administrator or another section of the institution that is resistant. So that's weighed in as well. So part of it is that with each program, the commissioners are trying to find the path that will push the program in the most effective direction, but within the context of that program. So these are the decisions that they will be making. The first two are that accreditation has been granted. Notes and observations are different, and I will talk about those in depth. Often a program will be accredited with both notes and observations, or just observations. So the notes are areas of non-compliance that the program will need to come into compliance with, but it's not serious enough to not accredit that program. And then the observations are kind of like those recommendations that we want you to respond to that, or the commissioners want you to, because it can make your program better, but it's not required. And then accreditation deferred is actually a ruling of taking no action. And I'll definitely talk about that in detail. And then accreditation denied is exactly what it sounds like, that there are serious or wide enough ranging areas of noncompliance, and the commissioners feel like this program is not able to be accredited. So when the program is granting accreditation, they're saying that the program is effectively in compliance with the principles. Of course, I was talking about the notes, that there may be a few areas that are not quite in compliance, but substantially the program is. If you have not paid your membership dues or have not submitted an annual report, then that is a level of, if you have any sort of administrative probation that you're on, you of course would not be able to be accredited. So I take care of that before we go through this process, but just so that you know, you can't not pay your dues and still be accredited. That is important that you do that. So we of course have to notify the program in writing of the decision. And that is the letters and things that you're used to getting from me that have a lot of words, but all of the words are meaningful and are supposed to help you and are there to provide you with the roadmap for how to respond or what the decision means. It also would help you if you disagreed with the decision. So certainly that might happen if your program would be denied accreditation. There is a process for appealing that. And so everything does need to be in writing and be very clear. We do also, I didn't put this on the other slide, but we do make commendations and say, your program is doing so well in this area, or this is really effective and is really going well. So there is a lot of praise. It's not just complaints or areas that are not compliant, just so you know. All right, the notes, as I had mentioned, these are the areas that are still not compliant. So what is provided in the letter is a very clear way that the program can get into compliance. It may be that there are some changes to an outcomes assessment plan. And so providing the documentation of those changes is what you would need to do to show that compliance. You have 2 years to, once you've been accredited, to provide that information within your annual report process to eliminate those deficiencies. And what happens is the Board of Commissioner member who's assigned to your program will read your annual report, will look at the note and your response, and just like they do in their meetings to determine accreditation, will make a decision about whether or not you have gotten rid of that note. And then I will notify you about that every year. And of course, some items will take longer to rectify. And so that's why you're given 2 years. And if you would need some sort of extension, then you would ask for that. All right, as I said before, the observations are suggestions for improvement. this is really that extra step that programs may take in order to move toward excellence in sport management education. And for some programs, that there is a curve, and you may be at the top of the curve where there is not so much that you can do to improve, but it's small little tweaks here and there. And that's really I call it the icing on the cake. But these are the observations can help you kind of move within that small area of adjustment that could help you. Commendations are areas of excellence where you could be an example. Certainly, I might ask if you do something a certain way or have a measurement tool or have a method that you've used to talk to alumni and keep them engaged. That's something I would want to share with other programs if you're amenable to that. But that is what a commendation is. And that really is something I hope that you can take pride in and can make your administrators happy with you. All right, deferral of accreditation. So these are the elements that would be present for that decision to be made. There may be some non-compliance with a number of principles. So this isn't completely defined, but we're talking about more than, say, 2 different principles, maybe 3 to 5 different principles. There are elements that are out of compliance. Certainly with outcomes assessment as the cornerstone, that one can really tip the decision over if that outcomes assessment is not quite ready to go, is not in compliance with the principle. So you get a letter, you say, we have not made it, the Board of Commissioners did not make a decision. They have deferred making a decision. They can ask you to respond to areas that they will outline, of course, in writing again in a letter. And you can do that at the next scheduled Board of Commissioners meeting, which is 4 to 6 months away, or sometimes more time is needed. So certainly the commissioners might say you can have a whole year to work on this, and you could provide, say, a progress report at the next meeting, but give yourself a year. So that is something that will be decided between the Board of Commissioners and your program. So there is a circumstance certainly where those deficiencies, while they're deferring a decision, giving you another chance to submit needed materials, where you're kind of on the cusp of being denied. So that would be conveyed in the letter that this is a deferral and the Board of Commissioners is concerned and you may be denied accreditation. And so that's just another layer that could be communicated. When you are deferred, whether you are in candidacy status and waiting for that first time accreditation, or if you're in reaffirmation of accreditation, you always hold the status that you already have. So that kind of remains in stasis. So you'll stay accredited or you'll stay in candidacy status. And so any of the timelines do not impact that you can maintain that status until something else happens. So you cannot appeal this decision. It is not an action that they've taken. They have deferred taking an action. So and that's important because with denial, of course, you can appeal it. And the reasons, of course, here at the bottom are listed that there are extensive deficiencies and or there is not sufficient information to be able to make a decision. So sometimes the site visit team will say the program must supply some material to show compliance with the principle, and the program might say we don't have it or we can't get it, or it might be that it takes more time to get that information. And so it's hard to make a decision when the information is not there. So this actually happens fairly commonly. Maybe 50% of programs are deferred, and it's not because it's just the way that it is. There are circumstances that, especially when there are just a short amount of time between a site visit and the commissioners meeting for a response to happen. And as you know, there should be 90 days, but that is, think about the site visit is 90 days prior to the meeting, and then you will be getting a report, and then you may have just 6 to 8 weeks to come up with a response. So that's why that happens. All right, a little bit more information here about accreditation deferred. I know that it can be upsetting to hear this sort of a response from the Board of Commissioners, but it is, as I said, not necessarily that uncommon. So I think this is reiterating what I have said before, and a lot of this is language taken directly from our accreditation process manual. So I put it in here because I literally have to follow this when I write letters to you and am communicating between the Board of Commissioners and you. And it is not because I made it up. It is because it is in the document, and that this is basically sort of the law that we have to follow. So this is just a little more instruction about what to do in that instance. So yes, it could be that your program could have its accreditation denied. One way that could happen, that of course is unfortunately out of your control, would be if the institution itself lost its national or regional accreditation, however that's defined in the United States or outside of the United States. That's one reason. And that means that your institution can no longer legally confer degrees. And we must have that in place in order for anyone to go through this process. So that's out of our hands as well. And then the reason to be denied generally would be if your program is in significant noncompliance with our principles. So we would, of course, let you know why that accreditation has been denied, what the reasons are, and then you or your program would be able to present your case to say, hey, that's, we've done some things are different. We have some information that we can provide. And you could come to the next meeting and present your case in a hearing. So this hearing, you have to then very much, I think, study our accreditation process manual because you need to follow it exactly. And you would be guided in that process, but at the same time, the onus is certainly upon you to know what you're supposed to do. So you would need to make the official request in writing that you would want the hearing, and it has to be signed by the president or chief academic officer or very similar position of your institution. So you would need that approval from the top to go through that process. And then you can respond to the elements that caused the decision for the denial. And you can then present evidence that you are in fact in compliance. And it may be that between the time that you submitted materials and when the decision was made, that some other changes came up that you that would put you in compliance with the principles in your mind. So you are basically providing that information in order to try to make a different, have the commissioners make a different decision. So you could send yourself and any colleagues to that meeting to present that material and to have that discussion. You could provide any legal counsel if you wanted that as well. And then COSMA would record that meeting and have it transcribed so that we could all have, so this is when things get, we have to make sure that we're keeping a record of everything that's happening so that it is fair. So again, kind of like with deferral, your program would retain its accredited status or its candidacy status. And then the decision that the board could make as a result of that discussion and that presentation of new information would be to affirm or hold up, say, yes, indeed, we are going to deny you, or no, we are not going to deny you, we're going to do something else, reverse the decision. So anything could happen at that meeting. And however, if the commissioners do decide to uphold their decision, then that is final. There is no other remedy. So if you do not make a request to reconsider the denial action, or if the commissioners uphold that denial, then basically everything lapses. Your accreditation is finished, and you must remove any evidence of that from your website. Or you're not in candidacy status any longer, and then you must wait 1 full year, and then you can reapply to be a candidate again and go through the process again. If there is a cost to having a scheduled meeting with the board, and we would need to pay that in advance, and that would be something that we would discuss prior to the meeting. Generally, the commissioners are meeting twice a year, and so if that timeline was working, and then those costs will already be paid for, and it would just be your own transportation or your own costs associated with traveling to that meeting. and not any additional costs related to COSMA. All right, so once so let's move away from denial. That is not very common. Once you are accredited, you must indicate this on your website, and we have a very specific way that you do that. And also on our website, on the COSMA website, the commissioners' decisions are posted. So you can see, and it's not, it does not cite all of the different principles that, it's not giving the detailed information that is provided in the letter that the program receives. But what you will see is some deferrals. You will see administrative probation. And I was referring to that earlier. That would be if a program hasn't submitted an annual report or a fee on time. You will see granting of candidacy status. You'll see granting of accreditation with notes and observations and things like that. So it's a summary. So actually, and I don't know how many people actually go to our website to look at this, you can look at all of the decisions that the board has made since its inception. So a lot of information is located there, and I provided this to you. But this is another way that the process is made transparent, in that you can see who has gone through the process and in what way. So I think that's interesting, and perhaps not utilized as much as it should be. All right, so I'm shifting gears a little bit here to reaffirmation of accreditation, and it is going to sound a lot like the process of first-time accreditation. So there is the payment of an administrative fee to prepare for a site visit and to go through this process. There's a very short application form, which is getting that buy-in or demonstrating that buy-in from a top administrator in your institution that they are in support of this program applying for reaffirmation of accreditation. So not a difficult form to fill out, but has weight and importance based on its symbolism. I have all of the materials that you submitted or that went back and forth between us from the entirety of the history of your program as it affiliates with COSMA. So if you want to look at your self-study from 7 years ago, or your candidacy materials, or anything that's gone back and forth, annual reports, I have them. If you are new to this process because it was just dumped in your lap and all of a sudden you have to go through a reaffirmation of accreditation, have no fear, I have these materials. So if you don't have them, I can give them to you. I'm going to archive them for one cycle, and then I will get rid of them after that. But I do keep it at least through 2 cycles. So another thing to keep in mind is that every 5 years, we are revising our documents. Those revisions may be insignificant or small, or not necessarily super impactful on what you're going to be putting in your self-study, but please use the current manuals. You can start your coordination with the writing of the self-study with your other faculty, with other departments, with administrators, with the library, with anyone that could help you. And I do recommend that you get help and that you delegate. So you can begin that process. You can start establishing a timeline for a site visit. And I'll say that when you aren't just having to know out of your own mind when you're up for reaffirmation of accreditation. I do send you a letter 2 years in advance, and I do that on purpose, even though it sounds crazy, to give you time to have a year to think about it, and then maybe a year to actually do it. And so I provide a sample timeline given the 7 years of the accreditation. So it goes from when the Board of Commissioners would meet to make an accreditation decision, and it works backwards to the site visit, to the submission of the self-study. So you can do it early. No one does that, but you can. Or you can, there is a bit of wiggle room, but generally you must have your site visit 90 days prior to the Board of Commissioners meeting, so that you have time to respond to the site visit report, as I've talked about. And that is set. That is not flexible. You can ask and be granted an extension, which is a separate process. and will be decided by the Board of Commissioners on a case-by-case basis. And that definitely has happened, I think, especially with our recent pandemic. And so it's not a cause of shame and not something that is only rarely agreed upon, but you'll have to do it at some point. It cannot be put off forever, but that is, so talk to me if you have any of that. And just like a normal or a regular first-time accreditation process, you're going to have a site visit that will likely be just 2 days, and we'll have 2 site reviewers, and then you will have another accreditation decision will be made. And those are exactly the same decisions as I've just discussed. So why am I talking about reaffirmation of accreditation? Isn't it exactly the same as first time? It is. However, what has happened in that 7 years? Well, you have been submitting an annual report with data on your outcomes assessment plan. Maybe you were not in charge of the accreditation process the last time the program went through this. Maybe, as I have said, it's dumped in your lap and you don't know what's going on. So there could be some areas where you just don't have as much experience or knowledge about how it went the first time, or what you're supposed to do. So of course, I can always provide assistance. You can look at the trainings that I provide to you on a regular basis. And I can look at drafts of things. I can send you the old documents. But some of the challenges that I see for reaffirmation of accreditation, ironically, do fall into some very specific areas. So outcomes assessment, it is tough. There are many variables that come to play when you're trying to measure student learning, including changing courses and changing faculty and changing assessments. And of course, all of that you must be disclosing on an annual basis. But there are reasons, and I completely understand why that process may not be as smooth as would be helpful to you or that you would like. So it is a perfect time to really look at that outcomes assessment plan that you've been reporting on and making some decisions about any changes you want to make to that, and making sure that your outcomes are measurable and aligned with your measurement tools. And as you can make changes at any time, this is a good time to make some changes. Another area that can be a bit weak is strategic planning. And this is not necessarily the fault of anybody in a program, but boy, are our presidents of universities and provosts and folks at the top just shuffling around all the time. It seems like everyone's getting a new president frequently. So that, of course, changes the direction of the university or the college. So what I do suggest is that you are consistent, you are an anchor, maintain your strategic planning process as you've developed it. Of course, when a new plan is there, you will make changes to your strategic plan and you will implement those at your program level. But do not write a self-study that has no strategic plan at all because you're sitting around waiting for the university. That may take a long time. Also, how is the Board of Commissioners supposed to make a decision about what you're doing with strategic planning if you're not doing any strategic planning? So I've talked about deferrals, and this is a reason for deferrals, is that they don't have enough information. So continue that process. Of course, anything you're going to do with strategic planning, I cannot imagine that it would be absolutely in contradiction to something that a new president would do. It just may mean that you will need to adjust. And that is just the facts of life and how that goes. I've also been mentioning that another challenge is when somebody new has come in who either knows a lot about accreditation, which is great, or doesn't know anything at all. And so, I'm here to help you. So please do seek out that assistance or the background materials, do your own due diligence to read documents and to look into the process and understand it. But this can really be a stumbling block. And it's not fair. I recognize that. And so maybe this is an opportunity to ask for a little bit of an extension if you need it, or just have a lot more coaching and training from me. And this is related to succession planning, which is not necessarily as clear as it could be in many programs, we do, in our most recent iteration of our accreditation principles document, have a question about succession planning. And we're trying to encourage you to develop some sort of plan. If so-and-so is doing this and so-and-so leaves, who is second in command to do that? So that can be a stumbling block as well. Of course, any change, and there have been many, and there are many on many different levels and of substance and of less substance, but that can really make it complicated. So you are writing a snapshot of your program in that self-study of a previous academic year. So you will be providing answers that might be a little bit different when the site visit team gets there, or might be a little bit different by the time the board is reviewing your materials. Keep us up to date. This is partly what the annual reporting process is all about. And we can make sure that we're looking at the most recent information. So you presented it in your self-study, but now you want to say it's that we are doing this differently here. It is about compliance, but it's also about reviewing the materials that reflect what you're doing at this time. And I did also mention changes in administrators, which can be quite the headache. Deans are another one. You may actually be going through deans that support or do not support as strongly the accreditation process. And of course, that's just for us to discuss and figure out what you're going to do. All right. I have also in this presentation trying to let you know about the ways in which I can help you, or the information that's out there that can make this process a little less onerous for you. So I've alluded to some of these already. You can look back at all of your old materials. We do have some templates that you use related to both the self-study document, of course, and then the outcomes assessment plan. But just make sure you can look at your old document and even copy and paste some things if the question is identical and nothing has changed. So, but make sure you're answering all the questions and all parts of the questions. And I mentioned also getting faculty to work together. If you have coworkers, do it together. It will make it a lot easier. Have regular meetings and try to know who's going to be doing what and what the deadlines are. So I say to identify and delegate the writing of different sections. Great idea. You do that, stick with the deadlines, make sure that there is one person who is able to make it feel and be coherent, and make sure that what was said here matches what was said here, which matches what was said here. That's something that I also do, but I would love it if you would do it first, so that it looks extremely coherent for me as well. I do recommend that you set your deadlines by working backward from the accreditation decision date to your current status. So if you get my 2-year letter for reaffirmation of accreditation, think about September 2025, and that means we're going to have a site visit in the spring of 2025, and we'll have to submit our self-study maybe in the winter or the late fall of 2024. That means our self-study year, so do that math. I've done the math for you in the letter, but do that for yourself so that you understand and you can get everybody on board. All right. If you have a process at your institution where any document that's going either to an accrediting body or just to an external entity that they must review it and approve it, make sure to build in that time into your process, because sometimes those things can sit on their desks, and we're talking about a several 100-page document. So build that into your process. I will work with you as best I can, but if you don't have a document, then there cannot be a site visit. So that is not good. And I am happy to read any drafts you want. I am not making the decision, which I hope takes a bit of pressure off of you, in that I'm just here to help. So you can send me one principle at a time. You can ask me questions about how to answer one of the questions. I'm happy to help you. And then once kind of a whole coherent draft comes together, then that's where I can do that analysis of consistency of your responses. All right, that's it. That's easy, right? Haha. So that is the end of my training for this fall. So all of the recorded sessions are on our website under the accreditation tab under accreditation training, which you can see there. And watching me talk to the Zoom maybe is not so exciting. So please get a hold of me if you need personal help. That is absolutely one of my favorite parts of the job, and it's not a problem at all. So thanks, everybody, and I will record again to you next year.